Happy Friday and welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We are stacked today as always, and we start with NBA playoff chaos because we got some big results last night, Caroline. I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for OKC to blow out the Lakers, and the whole time I'm watching, I'm thinking, wait, are the Lakers going to do the impossible? The Lakers were up at the half. The Lakers in the third quarter still up, and I'm thinking, are they going to make it a game? The answer was no. Somehow, some way, OKC up 2-0. Not just that they're up 2-0. It's that, as you see there, they win by 18 in a game where they were down in the third quarter, just reminding us how damn good the Thunder are. Wow.
I mean, if you just look at the final score, you would have thought that this was a beat down the entirety of the game, and then maybe the Thunder took their foot off the gas. But no, it was like it was a 5-point game in the fourth quarter, and then you blink and it's like, wait, the Thunder did what? It is so mind-boggling how inevitable this team is. Because you mentioned when you were watching this game and thinking, are the Lakers going to win this one? Are they going to make this a game? I didn't. I never felt that way. And that's the benefit of the doubt that the Thunder have earned over the last couple of years. It has nothing to do, not nothing to do with the Lakers, but more to do, in my opinion, with the Thunder than it did with the Lakers. Because even when the Lakers were up, even when the Lakers were able to scratch and claw their way to make this one a close game, I never had a doubt in my mind. I never felt like this game was actually legitimately at risk for Oklahoma City because I feel this sense of inevitability with this Oklahoma City team. That somehow, some way, no matter what point in the game it is, no matter what the score is, the Thunder will find a way. They'll put their foot on the gas, and anyone in a Thunder uniform, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It could be AJ Mitchell. It can be Cason Wallace. It can be Jared McCain coming off the bench. Names that the casual NBA fan has probably never even heard of before can come in and contribute for this basketball team. So even when it felt like it was close, even when it felt like the Lakers were starting to find a little bit of mojo, I had a question about who was going to win this basketball game because that is just this feeling of confidence that I have in this Thunder team, that this Thunder team, Fitzy, has earned, in my opinion.
This Thunder team went through this game last night with SGA, their MVP, on the bench late in the game where you thought, because of foul trouble, where you thought that was going to be a difference maker. It wasn't. This is a Thunder team that has been decimated by injuries all year long. You would think that'd be a difference maker. It wasn't. This Thunder team is exactly who they are right now, is exactly what we've been talking about all year. It is their depth and it is their ability to just beat you and beat you down throughout the course of an entire game that stands out here. And I guess I would say to everybody, if you're acting shocked this morning, this is going to be kind of a theme as we talk about the NBA playoffs last night of what did you expect? The Lakers are clearly nowhere near the team on paper or on the court that OKC is. It would take a golden God effort from the Lakers on a night where everything went wrong for OKC, for the Lakers to even steal a win. And the crazy part about that is they almost got that. They almost got all of those things together. This Lakers team is not positioned to play enough defense to slow down OKC. We know that. But last night, this Lakers team was at least getting scoring. LeBron was LeBron. Austin was Austin. You can look around and say, okay, we got the big night we needed from our stars. Yeah, they don't have Luka. They're not going to have Luka anytime soon. So I think the Lakers literally last night did absolutely everything they possibly could and had everything break their way that they needed to put them in this game and get them a win. And they lost by 18. That's the stunning part of who OKC is, because OKC is flat out just better than LA in every possible way. And if you're a Lakers fan and you're begging for a win, I would ask you, what are you begging for? You're begging to put off the inevitable. You're begging to wait to get your ass kicked for one more game. The best case scenario here is somehow the Lakers can sneak one out, make everybody feel a little bit better. But this isn't about the Lakers. This is about how good Oklahoma City is. Now, I will say, JJ Redick wanted to make it a little bit about the officials. I don't know how you feel about this, but this is his quote, LeBron in part. LeBron has the worst whistle of any star player I've ever seen. We like to play a game called On Target or On Something. Is JJ Redick on target here, talking about the refs not giving LeBron enough love?
He's on something. He's on something. I mean, if you want to look at this game last night, the Lakers got outshot. The Lakers got out rebounded. The Lakers got outscored by like 3, 4 times from their bench. The Lakers have turned the ball over 37 times in the last 2 games. The Lakers have lost all 6 matchups with the Oklahoma City Thunder by an average margin of 26 points. Look, I think that you can very fairly point to a couple of officiating decisions last night and circle those and add a little question mark there. Was officiating perfect? Absolutely not. But I'm looking at all of those things that the Lakers could have done better. All of those ways that the Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Lakers. And I can look at that and say, JJ, maybe it's not the refs. Maybe you just need to be better. Maybe it's not the refs. Maybe Oklahoma City Thunder is just working you. And I find it hilarious, Fitzy, honestly, that the Lakers and LeBron James are out here whining about, disadvantages, are out here whining about not getting preferential treatment. Because this team, and especially LeBron, have gotten plenty of preferential and special treatment over the years. So I don't want to hear it. You're the Los Angeles Lakers. If you want to point to officiating, fine. I'll point to about 10 other reasons why the Lakers didn't win that basketball game last night and why they won't win this series.
I am so disappointed in the tone of this because it's so wildly predictable, and I hate predictable. This was the most easy to predict. I had a friend the other day ask, "You want to go see Devil Wears Prada 2?" And I said, "Well, I didn't see one." They're like, "Oh, you got to see one." I summarized the plot in 30 seconds from what? No, but I don't need to. Like, without seeing one, fantastic. I can tell you. Yeah, Glenn Close is like the fashion person that's mean to everybody. And
Meryl Streep,
one of the two people. Like Meryl Streep. Sorry, I see. That's how much I know about these things.
How dare you?
But the point is, it's the most predictable plot ever. Like, you can see who the mean person is. The two people that are struggling to get recognition. One's nice, one's not nice. They're going to work their way up. And like, you can figure this out from the previews. It's wildly predictable. You can see Fast and the Furious 4 without seeing the first 3 because it's wildly predictable. The most predictable thing in the NBA is a coach right before they're going home saying, "Oh, the refs need to do better." Why? You're down 2-0. And all of a sudden, you want to make sure that you influence the whistles just a little bit for those refs when you get home. It is the most predictable thing ever. This is an action movie sequel where a coach comes out and says this because it plants a seed. This had nothing to do with how the Lakers actually lost. JJ Redick is just out here planting little tiny seeds, trying to make sure that the refs, when they go to LA, are thinking, "Oh, well, we got to make sure that we're officiating LeBron correctly." I don't know why this works so easily. I don't know why refs are so susceptible to Jedi mind tricks, but evidently every coach in the NBA thinks they are, because when you're down 2-0, you look in the handbook for coaches, you flip through and you're like, "Oh, it says, tell the refs to do a better job. That will help the officiating in game 3. If it works, shame on the NBA refs for being that easily influenceable. Because to your point, Caroline, this is not about the officiating. This is about the fact that one team is great and the other team is just a pretty good NBA team. And when you're a pretty good NBA team taking on a great one in a 7-game series in the playoffs, you are going to get your ass kicked. It is inevitable. Yeah. So while we're speaking of inevitable and predictable, let's get to the other game from last night. The Pistons take down the Cavs. And I just, again, Caroline, I'm going to move my little soapbox up and I'm going to stand up on it. Cleveland fans, Cavs, the organization. What in the hell did you expect out of this series if you were surprised that James Harden has come up small? At some point, you are who you are. And as much as I sit here all the time and say legacy conversations should not just be about chips, because I don't believe they should be, I do think that legacy conversations have to be about your body of work overall and everything that you've ever done, which is good and bad. When you talk about everything that James Harden has done in the playoffs, it's a whole bunch of suck. It's suck over and over and over again. You see the note there, 36 times he's had 3 or fewer made field goals. 20% of his playoff games. In fact, found this nugget. Harden finished the game 2 with 10 points, 3 of 13 shooting, 2 points in the second half. With his 20th game shooting 25% or less from the field, that breaks a tie with Bob Cousy for the most playoff games in the shot clock era of that level of suckery. You are talking about all-time playoff suck. That is who James Harden is. That is who James Harden has been since the day he started his playoff run. That is exactly what the Cavs had to know. If you traded for James Harden and you didn't think you were going to get this version of James Harden in the playoffs, I don't know what to tell you. At some point, I can't help it if the Cavs were too stupid to see the inevitability of what James Harden was going to be, because the day he went to Cleveland on this show, I told you this is going to happen. James Harden is not the guy that you want on your basketball team during the playoffs at all. Point, period, blank. That's the end of the statement. There's nothing he's going to do that's going to change that, because the body of work is too huge. If we're sitting here saying, oh my God, can James Harden change his legacy? I'd have to believe that dragons can fly and pigs can ice skate, because there's about equal chance that those things are going to happen, that Harden's going to go on a run that suddenly wills the Cavs to a championship. James Harden is who he is. And if Cavs fans or the Cavs organization is surprised by that, shame on them, not shame on James Harden. He's exactly been this his entire career.
Dragons can fly. They just don't exist.
They
very famously can fly. They do have wings.
Yeah. Maybe I should have had dragons ice skate.
They just don't exist.
That's better. Yeah.
There you go. That's the one. We're just workshopping in real time here. I'm always here to help us improve, Fitzy. You bring up Devil Wears Prada. I'll bring up another one of my favorite all-time movies, and that's The Cinderella Story. And there is a line in that movie where she says, waiting for you is like waiting for rain in this drought. Useless and disappointing. And that's how I feel about James Harden in the postseason. Waiting for James Harden to figure something out in the playoffs and be at least not a liability. Not even asking James Harden to be like some massive explosive alpha. Just don't be a liability is like waiting for rain in this drought. It is useless and it is disappointing because he is who he is. James Harden has now had 4 games. Not all time, not career, this postseason. 4 games in this postseason in which James Harden has turned the ball over more than he's made a field goal, more than made field goals. 4 games, he has more turnovers than made shots. That's disgusting. That's a horrific, horrendous stat for literally anybody who's under contract in the National Basketball Association, but especially for somebody who I think will be viewed the day that he decides to hang it up as one of the best to ever play the game. A top 30 player all time, I think, is fair and at least conservative to say. It's disappointing for anybody, but especially somebody like James Harden. So if you're a Cavs fan and you're waking up this morning and you're thinking, okay, what can we do to get back in this? Well, is James Harden going to not be a liability? Is James Harden going to take care of the basketball? Is James Harden going to make some shots? Is James Harden going to at least slightly look reminiscent of what he is in the regular season and the postseason? Because the answer to that for me is no. What would lead us to believe that game 3 in this series, and what year 12, 13, 14, what year is this for James Harden in the NBA? He's been around for a long time. So what would make me believe that game 3 in this series after a very long and very successful career would be anything different? I think that's what's so frustrating for Cavs fans is we've seen this before, that we saw that this last year. The Cavs were one of the best teams in the NBA in the regular season last year. And then they just flushed it down the toilet in the postseason. And while they weren't as good in the regular season this year as they were last year, we're seeing the same kind of meltdown. So we're seeing the James Harden meltdown. We're seeing Kenny Atkinson be like the James Harden of coaches who melts down in the postseason. That is wildly frustrating, I'm sure, for Cavs fans. But that's just who this team is. And that's who James Harden is. That's not a lazy narrative. It is what it is.
The funny thing to me is year 17 for Harden, by the way. And here's the crazy thing to me. I've said this many times.
Worse.
One of my isms in life. We all have isms in life. And one thing that Kenny Rogers, the great country music singer, told me years ago that I'll never forget. It's an ism I live by. And that's, we all hear perception is reality. That's not enough. You have to accept that perception is reality because you'll always live in it and you helped create it. You have to accept what you have done in your own perception. James Harden can sit here and get frustrated by the way he's covered. Harden fans can get frustrated by the way he's covered. It's happened for a reason. It is not by accident that this has happened. These narratives have been crafted because of the way he's played in these situations over and over and over again. And at some point, you are who you are. And I can't ever make it make sense. I cannot make sense of why one of the best players of his generation in the NBA comes up so small in the playoffs, but he does. I can't make sense of it, but I can tell you it's the one thing you can count on for James Harden. You can't count on Harden to be great. You can count on Harden to be invisible when you need him the most. And when you accept that reality, it certainly changes the level of frustration you have when you eventually see the inevitable. Plenty more to come. We got lots to break down on the NBA, of course, but coming up next, the W is underway this weekend. We will triple threat some of the storylines you may not know about coming up next.
Broader question, I think, from the Phoenix side, how do you feel about their direction moving forward? How do you feel about their ability to build off of what this season was?
How could you feel bad about the direction? They weren't supposed to be here. You have a coach that understands exactly what he wants to do on both ends of the floor. So just getting the right pieces around it, having a level of versatility, that's all you got to do. So I think it's a salute to Phoenix. It's unfortunate it went this way in the playoffs, but the Thunder are a machine, and it was a bad matchup.
There were rumors that this was going to happen before the draft, that Jadarian Price was going to end up going to the Seahawks at 32. I think you can make a very strong argument that you could take Price as early as the 106. That might end up getting you in trouble, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about some of the other players in that range.
There was not many other depth charts like across the league where there's just a smooth sailing spot to that running back one position.
Also got a rushing touchdown. Gonna run it to Brown. Flea flicker. Back to Myler under pressure. Myler throws it late. Brown. And Brown, the stiff arm, crosses the midfield, down the far boards. Brown for the end zone. Waltzes in for the Rattlers touchdown.
That's the MVP throwing to the offensive rookie of the year right there.
So Brown took the handoff, flipped it back, and then he found space.
The truth here is this is a very far delineation from where the top of the quarterback game is right now, physically.
Correct.
You know, when you look at, like, you call the top 12 quarterbacks, everyone's got some sort of extreme physical trump card.
This ain't Taylor Green.
Part of the problem to me with this pick is you saw exactly where the physical limitations hurt Ty Simpson last year at Alabama.
Simpson is a pretty good athlete, but I'm not going to run design runs with him because you'll get crushed.
WNBA action is underway this weekend. You see some of the lineup there, and that has us doing something we love to do here called Triple Threat. We're going to take a look at some of the biggest takes, and then we're going to figure out if we're passing them, we're shooting them, or we're dribbling them, Caroline. So let's look at some of the under-the-radar stories that maybe we haven't seen enough of, and we'll start with the Chicago Skyy. After trading away Angel Reese, the Chicago Skyy will be the worst team in the WNBA this season. Do you shoot, pass, or dribble that take?
I pass on that. You know, the Chicago Skyy are an easy team to kind of be the butt of a lot of jokes in the WNBA. And look, rightfully so. They've kind of earned that moniker. I think this season is different, and that has everything to do with Chicago and also everything to do with the field. Chicago is clearly trying to win basketball games this year. I don't think that you move on from Haley Van Lith and sign Natasha Cloud and pay her the kind of money that they are paying her if you're just okay with being bad, if you're down with being one of the worst teams in the W. They bring in Rickea Jackson. They pair Natasha Cloud with Skylar Diggins. And they're bringing in some offensive weapons. They're bringing in some veterans in this league. But I don't think you sign, Natasha Cloud is 34, 35 years old. You don't sign a 35-year-old Natasha Cloud if you just are wanting to kind of flush this season down the toilet. It also has to do with the field. There are a lot of teams that I think have some big question marks this year. I look at, first of all, the Portland Fire. A brand new team, big time question marks. Alex Sarama, their head coach, has never been a head coach in the WNBA before. I think it's fair to say that that team has a lot of question marks and could be a potential contender for one of the worst teams in the league. I look at the Seattle Storm, who moved on from their 5 leading scorers this past offseason. Now you're bringing back Dominique Blanca, the number 2 overall pick from last year's draft. Flau'jae Johnson plugs into that roster, but still, there's a lot of question marks surrounding what the Seattle Storm can be. I look at the Dallas Wings, another team. Obviously, they had back-to-back number 1 overall picks. I expect the Dallas Wings to be much improved this season. Paige Becker's coming into year 2, adding AZ Fudd for some depth and some scoring. They're bringing in a lot of WNBA veterans onto that team. Jose Fernandez comes in and coaches that team. But still, there's a lot of newness on that team. So I'll believe it whenever we can actually see it on the court. So with what Chicago has done with their roster this past offseason, bringing in a bunch of vets, clearly showing what their identity is, and also looking at the rest of the league, no, I don't think Chicago is going to be the worst team in the league. I'll pass.
I love that. I love that. I'm also going to pass, but I'm not passing for the same reason. It's not so much about hope for Chicago. It's about a lack of hope for the Connecticut Sun. I'll admit a little bit of my bias here. I live right down from Bristol, Connecticut. I live right down from Mohegan Sun. I have gone to countless Sun games over the last several years. And I'm getting all these emails now that are like, oh, one more time before they leave, be sure you catch them. That's the ad campaign. The ad campaign right now is, well, before we leave, go ahead and get in there and try and see Connecticut one more time. This is that awkward moment where we know a team is leaving, and many cities have gone through this. Caroline, you grew up in St. Louis. You understand what it's like for relocation. We all understand that ending period is a brutal one, but unfortunately, my heart breaks for Oakland fans that had to sit there while they knew the team was going to Vegas. We all know how heartbreaking it's going to be, but now I'm looking at a Mohegan tribe that is selling this team and all of a sudden wondering why they would really put that much work into this roster. The team's going away. There's not going to be a home court advantage at all. The Sun are going to be. So I'm passing on the comment that the Chicago Sky will be the worst team in the W this season, because that distinction, my friend, belongs to Connecticut. So let's go to the next one. If I say to you, Napheesa Collier is right, the game is too physical and needs to be catered more to the offensive skill players. A quote that she had recently about the way the game is played and called. What do you think? Shoot, pass, or dribble? Is Napheesa correct?
I'm going to pass on that too. Look, whenever Fee speaks into a microphone, we saw that just a few months ago when she called out Kathy Engelbert at her end of the season press conference. People listen. She's a representative for the league. She represents the Players Association. She is, the founder of one of the premier, if not the premier, offseason leagues in women's basketball. When Napheesa Collier has something to say, it commands headlines. But I don't think that the game should cater to anyone or anything other than the rules and the identity of the league. And I think that it's important to also consider the source here, considering that Napheesa Collier was Defensive Player of the Year in 2024. Napheesa Collier is a very, very good, one of the premier defensive players in the W. So I think that it has a little bit more, it bears a little bit more weight when it's coming from somebody who does have a very great reputation as a defensive player in this league. The game isn't good when your superstars are hurt. And we saw that last year. Caitlin Clark spent a majority of the season on the bench. Napheesa Collier herself spent a portion of the season on the bench. Brianna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, those two were banged up. One of the best teams in the W. The New York Liberty got bounced in the first round of the playoffs because they just did not have the horses and were not healthy enough to compete in the postseason. So yeah, the league is worse when your superstars are hurt. Of course. That's the same thing with the NFL and the NBA and Major League Baseball. WNBA is no different. But I don't think that officiating should cater to anybody. I think that you should cater officiating to the rules.
That's all very well said and fair. I do think that there's probably a middle line on some of this. If the comment is that they need to be more catered to the offense, I somewhat shoot that. I cautiously shoot that. Terrible way to shoot, but I cautiously shoot that only because offense wins, right? Because what we don't want to see is more Caitlin injuries. What we don't want to see is any world where Paige Beckers gets hit more than she needs to get hit. Like, guard play is, I think, at times the most electric part of what we see in the W. And as physical as it gets at the rim sometimes, that just slows the whole game down. And for casuals that tune in, it might not look as pretty. So there's some people that think, hey, I love the 90s physicality, the 90s basketball approach to the W. And I hear that, I understand that. But I mean, we're just in this spot where the long ball wins and everybody likes to see points, just like everybody likes to see goals. Nobody sat there after a Stanley Cup final game, or Stanley Cup playoff game, I should say, the other night, that the final score was 9-6. Nobody freaked out, right? Like, because that seems like an electric game. But in a Stanley Cup playoff game that was won where somebody only got 9 shots off, everybody's like, oh my God, hockey's broken, right? Like, we love offense in every sport. So because of the way that we love offense and because of the quality shooting that we have in the perimeter coming into the league right now, I do like the idea of catering the rules more to offense. But you are right. You can't just turn around and take the rules and suddenly shift those rules. Like, I'm not asking the refs to call the game different just because Napheesa Collier wants to see a different style of game on the floor. Let's get another one in here. All right,
quickly on that, though, Fitzy, before we get
to
our third one. You bring up hockey, and I think it's a very fair point that points are fun. Same thing in baseball. Like, does anybody want to see a no-hitter? It's cool when it's your team, but it's wildly boring to watch. But when you bring up hockey, what is even better in hockey games than a bunch of offense and a bunch of goals? Fights! Like, if you go to a hockey game and there's a fight and you get to see the fight in real time, everyone's like, yeah, because we're all sickos for physicality. I think that's part of what makes the WNBA fun, is it is physical and it's not constantly a whistle. That's one thing that makes me roll my eyes so much, in the men's NCAA tournament, is it's like every 30 seconds, someone's going to the line. There's a whistle every time somebody just breathes in the same stratosphere as another player. Now, I do think that there is a wide margin between the level of physicality in the W now and then a whistle every 2 seconds. But that is my fear of, look, while everyone loves offense, I do understand that nobody wants to see a whole bunch of free throws being shot throughout the course of the game.
I just got my physicality there because you just kicked my ass in a debate. That is absolutely true. Fighting wins all the time. All right. What about this one? The WNBA finally has a true middle class, and it's more fascinating than ever. We're used to the haves and the have-nots, Caroline. You shoot past a dribble that there's actually a group of teams now that don't suck, that are in the middle class for the WNBA.
Oh, I'm shooting on this. And this has been one of the most fun parts of the WNBA to watch evolve. Aside from the business, aside from the attention, aside from the money, the evolution of the middle class has made this league wildly intriguing. I think going into the season, you have a clear, first class, if you're a clear upper class of the W, at least where things stand right now. The Aces, the Fever, the New York Liberty all kind of, fall into that class. But then you have a team like the LA Sparks that I think is wildly fascinating. Cameron Brink comes back and is healthy. Kelsey Plum comes into year 2 with LA. If they can stay healthy, I think they're one of those teams that right now I would put as not championship caliber, but like right there, can work themselves into that upper tier, or they could miss the postseason for the 5th year in a row. Who knows? I look at the Minnesota Lynx, a team that has long been in that championship tier, but Napheesa Collier is banged up, and we don't know what her return window looks like. I don't think the Lynx are going to be a championship caliber team without her, but they can win a lot of basketball games, sure. When Cheryl Reeve is your head coach, I am never going to count you out. Speaking of head coaches, I think the Toronto Tempo, even in their inaugural season, it can be considered kind of that middle tier, that middle class, because Sandy Brondello is their head coach. I think Sandy Brondello is one of the best coaches in the W. When you talk about Becky Hammon, she absolutely belongs in that category. The head coach of the Las Vegas Aces, Sandy Brondello, is right there as well. The Golden State Valkyries, they were kind of in that middle class last year as well. Found themselves in the postseason, weren't necessarily championship contenders, but they were a team that made a lot of noise in their inaugural year. I expect them to be right there, back there as well. The Phoenix Mercury, they were in the WNBA finals last year. They lose Satu Sabally, 1/3 of their big 3. So what do they look like losing Satu to the New York Liberty? So a lot of teams in there that I don't view as the elite of the elite, but they're also teams that are going to be wildly relevant this season.
Yeah, it's crazy that last season 5 teams finished 10 games or more above 500. 4 teams finished 10 games or more below 500. So the middle class is going to be important for the W. Can't wait. Season tips off on Saturday. Coming up next, we're going to get some thoughts on the PGA Championship. It's right around the corner. Chad Mumm going to join us next to break it all down.
Kick is on the way. And Dante Wright will bring it out of the end zone. Right across the 5, the 10, the 15. Right across the 20. Into New Mexico territory. 15, 10, 5. Does he get in?
He did.
Touchdown,
He did.
Pirates.
Dante Wright goes back. He played like a center fielder at Yankee Stadium and then takes it the length of the building. The young man was electric on that kick return.
Do you not enjoy this?
No.
Would you rather not do it?
That's not in the cards.
Why not?
It's not an option. I've worked so hard for so long. I've built myself up to a position and I've dug myself into a hole.
But I feel like you've reached a point in your life where, correct me if I'm wrong, you could do other things.
What am I gonna do? There's nothing like a fight night check. That's the beauty of fighting.
Let's get to your next winner here, Boone. And this time we're not talking about rookie. We're talking about a veteran fallout. Who's a winner to you from the NFL draft?
I think Rashee Rice has to be mentioned, right? Now he doesn't have any additional new competition that we have to worry about, especially a guy like Tate could have shown up there and been that true outside receiver for them. But we're looking at his fantasy outlook right now, and fantasy-wise, this year and beyond, it still looks pretty good. He survived the draft.
Edwards has got it. Throw, tip, intercepted. Destin Mack, the INT. And he makes the biggest play of the game defensively for Orlando.
Great coverage on the back end by the Orlando Pirates. 4th down and 4. Destin Mack in coverage. Big time hit by Kyrie Coleman leads to the interception.
Bryson Dechambeau has revealed 2 things that need to happen for him to return to the PGA Tour in an exclusive interview with Scratch. Do we want to see that return? I do love drama. So we're going to bring on Chad Mumm, president of Pro Shop, co-host of the Vanity Index podcast. Chad, we'll get into some actual golf, but I want to start with the drama side of this because I'm that guy. What do we make of all of this? Because Bryson's talking a lot right now about what it's going to take. What do fans want? What do you expect out of this?
Well, I mean, I think clearly the Bryson comments from Liv in Virginia has been the biggest story in the world of golf this week. And the PGA Tour is in a signature event over at the Truist back at Wells Fargo. Obviously, we have the PGA Championship next week, but all eyes are on Bryson Dechambeau. You know, what's he going to do? And listen, it's been 4.5 years since we had this kind of drama between Liv and the PGA Tour, players moving back and forth. And, you know, Bryson's probably the biggest potential get for the PGA Tour, him and Jon Rahm. And one of the things I think is interesting here is there was a lot of narrative that got started kind of led by Phil Mickelson, I think, around the PGA Tour's image and likeness rules. And back, if you guys remember, way back in 2021, 2022, NFTs were a huge thing. And I think Phil had a lot of opinions that the PGA Tour was restricting players' ability to kind of monetize their image. Mainly, I think, in his point of view, was NFTs. But Bryson has become, in the kind of intervening years as he's gone to Live, one of the biggest stars on YouTube, not just in golf, but one of the biggest sports stars in YouTube. It's been an unbelievable image transformation for him. And I think it's interesting that people keep bringing out these tweets, as you see here, that Live is somehow less restrictive than the PGA Tour. And I think it's kind of, it's obviously everyone cares about what's going to happen with Bryson. The PGA Tour today actually announced a change to their social media policy. So you could see them lining up the kind of the cards to try to bring Bryson back. And, you know, I know that from what my understanding of those existing rules, there really wasn't any restrictions that he would have on the PGA Tour that was different from what he would have on Live. But now the PGA Tour, as of this morning, in an exclusive with Front Office Sports, has announced that they are officially going to be relaxing those rules even further, which to me signals, you know, they want to do everything they can to kind of clear the decks for Bryson.
Do they need Bryson?
Clearly, they don't need Bryson. I mean, we are several years into a PGA Tour without Bryson. I think that those guys in particular, some of the bigger stars that left to Live, thought they might be the tipping point to kind of either force a merger or force a resolution. Clearly, with Jon Rahm leaving, Bryson DeChambeau leaving, Phil Mickelson leaving, these big stars. Brooks Koepka's already come back to the PGA Tour. PGA Tour, was shaken but not beaten. And as you have probably covered on this show, the ratings have been up, year over year. Golf continues to grow in the macro cultural consciousness, and I think the PGA Tour is benefiting from that. And they've been able to create new stars. I mean, Scotty Scheffler, has emerged as the best player in the world. There's a whole class of new players and younger stars that have kind of made their name on the PGA Tour. Would the PGA Tour like to have Bryson DeChambeau back? Absolutely. He represents an entirely different kind of player in that he has embraced social media, perhaps more than any other athlete I can think of in any sport. He has a different and younger audience, and he is controversial, which I think the biggest miss that the PGA Tour has had with this live disruption has been kind of the loss of some of its great villains. And all sports need villains to drive interest. And Bryson's one of those that he's polarizing, and he's got millions and millions of fans, but he also has millions of people who, he's not their cup of tea. So I think obviously the PGA Tour has proven that they don't need any one single player. I mean, Tiger Woods hasn't been competitively relevant on the PGA Tour for, since 2019, really. And the tour's done just fine. I think would they like to have him back? Absolutely. I think they are, as you can see, changing their social media rules, with the idea of, making it as easy as possible to bring him back and kind of, restore the old PGA Tour of old.
Going back to the inception of Live, I remember the subsequent commentary was, this is a threat to the PGA. This is a threat to the game of golf. You bring up how viewership is up, popularity is up. Could you argue that Live actually made the PGA Tour stronger and more popular?
I think that it's hard to pin it on Live. I think definitely what Live did was put pro golf into the kind of sports argument industrial complex. So, you had all the morning shows talking about it. It was a disruptive force. So definitely, kind of took this sleepy sport and injected a sense of really high drama. And obviously I created the show Full Swing on Netflix. We happen to have cameras rolling in the first year of kind of Live's massive disruption. I think that show absolutely benefited from the kind of macro drama. I think what people don't talk about often enough, though, is that golf in general has exploded in popularity. And it kind of in some ways completely apart from professional golf. You've seen this wave of participation in the game go way, way up. A lot of that driven by COVID, during lockdowns, people who maybe hadn't played golf before picked up the game, or people who hadn't played in a long time started playing again because it was one of the things you could do outside. But it wasn't just normal people doing that. It was like every athlete and celebrity has now become obsessed with golf. And I think that if you, open up Instagram or TikTok or watch on YouTube, now you see golf used to be seen as this kind of stuffy, kind of crusty, old country club, old white guy kind of sport. And now every single NBA player, it feels like, is obsessed with golf. Every baseball player, Mookie Betts, hitting balls on the range in Los Angeles. You've got this, every country musician now seems to be obsessed with golf. And it feels like golf has become this thing that's cool. And so it's had this kind of rise in culture relevance. Obviously, Happy Gilmore 2 became the largest, most watched movie in Netflix history. And there's a Will Ferrell golf show coming in July to Netflix. And there's an Apple show about golf with Owen Wilson. And it just feels like golf's kind of permeated the culture. I think finally the PGA Tour is, and widely professional golf, so that includes the majors, is starting to see, the uplift of just kind of golf's relevance and culture. And there, of all the new participants in golf, depending on who you listen to in terms of the research, there's something like 50 million golfers in the US, but that's up from about 30 million. So, we've got 15 to 20 million new players. And the people who are new to golf, they've come in non-traditional ways, whether they're hitting on simulators. Simulator golf has become extremely popular. But basically every mid-level town up to every major city has dozens of places where you can go and hit balls in a simulator. Things like Top Golf, introduced casual golf to people, made it fun, made it a date night activity. And then the rise of YouTube golf obviously had a huge part of that. YouTube golf is the fastest growing sport on YouTube, is people playing golf on YouTube. And it just so happens that the biggest golfer happens to be a professional in Bryson DeChambeau, but there are dozens of creators that have become extremely popular and built really durable fan bases that are completely outside of professional golf. So I think you're seeing the kind of rising tide lifting all boats here. And certainly I think the PGA Tour had its kind of years in the wilderness for the last couple of years as it's figured out how to reset its competitive model and really understand how to get the best players playing together all at once. But, I think last year's win with Rory McIlroy at the Masters completely broke through into the general national news consciousness, not just the general sports consciousness. I think my prediction was the Masters this year was going to be the highest rated one in a decade. I think that came true. Obviously, Rory going back to back, but I didn't even think it mattered. I didn't think Rory needed to win for it to be the highest rated one. I think last year's Masters captured the attention of culture, and I think you saw it this year with all of the influencer activations, every single celebrity, making their way to Augusta. Augusta has this aesthetic that's easy to put on an outfit and feel like you're a part of it. Our joke inside the industry was it was the Coachellafication of the Masters, and I think that is just another sign of golf's general health in kind of the wider cultural consciousness.
So let's talk a little PGA Championship. Scotty, obviously on everybody's mind, shortest odds of plus 400. Trying to defend the crown, but hasn't won since January. Is this his tournament to lose?
I think it's going to be hard to bet against Scotty in any tournament, and he feels like he's knocking on the door. He's had a handful of, had a ton of top 10 finishes, a handful of second place finishes. It just feels like he hasn't been able to, get all of the facets of his game firing the way you normally see it to kind of go out and win a more than once this year. But, I love Scotty for this. He's got all the right tools, obviously. You got to talk about the golf course and course fit. The PGA Championship traditionally is kind of a bomber's paradise. They set up the golf course long and hard and difficult, not in a different way. It's a different test than like a US Open might be or a Masters might be. So you got to look at all the long hitters for PGA Championships. We're also at Aronimink, which is a Donald Ross golf course recently restored by Gil Hanse. So you got to look at also people who are successful and have played Donald Ross course as well. So I like Xander Schauffele. It's kind of a Donald Ross specialist. You look at other Donald Ross courses like Pinehurst, Eastlake. You got to look at players who have had success at those courses. So, that brings Bryson DeChambeau into the conversation. His recent major record hasn't been great, but I feel like, this course sets up well for him. Obviously, he won at Pinehurst at the U.S. Open a handful of years ago. You got to look at a guy like Tommy Fleetwood, who won at Eastlake last year. Eastlake's also a Donald Ross design. So, I think hard to bet against Scotty, but I like Xander for this one.
So Jordan Spieth has also been red hot as of late. 5 top 20 finishes in his last 8 starts. Could this finally be the year that Jordan Spieth completes his career Grand Slam?
Look, I think that Rory McIlroy winning the Masters last year after a 10-year major drought was the biggest possible story in the world of golf. I think Jordan Spieth winning the PGA Championship, if anything could top that, it would be Jordan Spieth winning the PGA Championship. Jordan still, despite not having won for since 2021, I guess, he still captivates golf fans, and he is still a national brand. He's one of the, I would say, 3 to 5 players who really moves the needle in professional golf. I'd put, Rory up there. Scotty is getting there. Bryson is one of those, and then Tiger Woods. And Jordan Spieth, again, continues to be a fan favorite. I think that would break contain, so to speak, and become an absolutely massive story. He has been playing better. He had a hand injury last year that he's been rehabbing. He's been working on his swing. His driving this year has been exceptional. Basically tee to green, he's been the best he's been in several years. It's just the putter needs to get hot. Jordan Spieth, always a threat, always an entertainment, no matter what. But him getting it done to complete the Grand Slam at Aronimink would be the biggest possible story for pro golf.
You've mentioned Rory a couple of times, and I just keep thinking, like, you're back-to-back now. I mean, like, you're just at a different level, and now you got to get back out on a course, which takes ultimate focus. What do you expect from Rory, especially coming off of the momentum of being a back-to-back Masters champion?
After he won last year at the Masters, I think everybody had high expectations that, maybe he could do the career Grand Slam, just because he finally got the weight off of his back and winning this golf tournament that had eluded him for so long. I think that Rory has said publicly that he didn't feel the same competitive drive. Took him a little while to get over that win. The Rory that we saw at the Masters this year was Rory back in full flight. I mean, he took that golf tournament wire to wire and dismantled it. Other than kind of a shaky Saturday and a bit of a shaky start to Sunday, this was like Rory with his A game. And it feels like he's kind of gotten through the hangover of getting over the sort of 10-year major drought. So I think you got to favor Rory at basically every single golf tournament. I put him and Scotty as the clear favorites at any event that they tee it up. And it's again, Aronimink sets up perfect for Rory's game. Rory has the kind of golf game like Scotty. There's really not a single golf course that doesn't set up well for him. He's one of the longest hitters in the game. He hits his irons super high. The greens are going to be firm. There's going to be a huge premium on sort of long iron approach shots. Rory's one of the best in the world at that. Obviously, we can see he really has no weaknesses in his game. His wedges historically has been, kind of his one weakness. He's tightened that up. He's putting great. His short game is world class. So you got to think that, coming off of a year where, I'd say his major season last year after the Masters was a disappointment. I think you can understand that for a guy who, had been fighting for 10 years to kind of get this monkey off his back, to finally get it done, to become a Grand Slam champion. I think we see now kind of a newly motivated Rory to say, okay, I got it done, completed the Grand Slam. This thing's been on my mind for, over a decade, maybe my entire life. I've been working for this. Let's get motivated again. And as he said in his press conference at the Truist this week, it was a realization for him that his career's not over. He's still in the peak of his powers. He's still in the prime of his career. And I think that attitude of now he doesn't have anything left to prove to anybody frees him up. And a freed up Rory is a terrifying sight to behold in terms of if you're one of his competitors.
One guy who we will not see out on the greens next week is Phil Mickelson. We're seeing all the reports that say that he's out due to a, quote, personal matter. What do you know about Phil Mickelson's situation and when we might be able to see him come back?
Well, anytime Phil's not in the field, I think it's a shame. He is a PGA champion himself, obviously won at Kiowa at 51 years old, one of the great sports stories, of this era. And one that I think is a little bit has been overshadowed by Rory's win. And then obviously Tiger and everything that happened, Tiger in 2019 at the Masters, and obviously everything that's happened since then with Liv. I don't know anything that's going on with Phil. Obviously he's been sitting out, his appearances on Liv for this year. He's now sitting out the PGA Championship. Hopefully he'll be back in the mix as we get into the US Open and Open Championship. But, I have honestly have not heard. It's been kind of surprising given how the media works these days that there's really been no details. So we just, hope that everything's okay with Phil and with his family.
Chad, we appreciate your time. You guys can follow him on Twitter, X at Chad Mumm. Obviously, check out the Vanity Index podcast and, of course, President of Pro Shop. Chad, we appreciate your time. Thanks for the expertise joining us. We appreciate you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me.
It's great stuff from Chad, and we'll continue to break down the PGA Championship right around the corner. Coming up next, we're going to figure out what to do with another controversial story in college football. That's coming up next on Yahoo Sports Daily.
Simpson is a pretty good athlete, but I'm not going to run design runs with him because you'll get crushed.
What you see here is the tweet from Adam Schefter breaking down the wide receiver room for the Green Bay Packers. And one of the names on that room, Skyy Moore. Skyy Moore, veteran returning receiver, now with the Packers, joins us on the show this morning. Skyy, we appreciate your time. When you see that list, I mean, you're used to working your way into new wide receiver rooms. What makes that room special to you?
Honestly, first of all, thanks for having me. But when I see that list, I just see a group of guys that are just hungry and ready to become, take that next step in their career. Like Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Matt Golden. You just see a lot of very talented guys that, have the ability to be him. And we just got to, take that next step and just go out and do it.
I mean, your entire NFL career, you have been such an electric returner. And Packers GM Brian Gutekunst said part of the reason why you were signed was so you could make a difference on special teams. So hearing the GM of the Packers saying that, what does that mean to you?
It just gives me a great deal of confidence knowing that, the organization that, came and got me and they believe in me. And it makes me feel like I'm wanted, first of all. And then on the flip side of that is I'm hungry to, just come in and help another franchise, build towards something special.
You've had the opportunity in your career to play for some great coaches, like Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan. Now you get Matt LaFleur. So what's that like for you as a weapon to see different coaches come in and figure out how to best utilize those weapons? What's that been like for you?
It's been great, just working for guys like that now under Matt. It's you get to see like how all of these great minds think and how they utilize their weapons, like you said. And it's been since I've been at the Packers, it's been another, like, it's allowing me to learn. It's like keeping me on my toes and allowing me to just develop as a football player mentally.
I mean, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, that is a who's who of offensive masterminds. What are some of the biggest
Yeah.
things, whether it's about football or about life in general, that you've learned from three of the head coaches that you've had the opportunity to play with?
Well, I've only been in the building with Matt for about 2 weeks now, so we still got it.
It's new.
But he seems one of those. He's cut from that cloth. But as far as Coach Reed and Kyle go, they're just guys that, like, you want to play for. I remember last year, Coach Shanahan would just have me ready to run through a wall just before, like during the team meeting, like before the games. And Coach Reed, he just always wanted to make him proud. So it was just like the writing was on the wall for both of those guys. And I expect no different with Matt. Like it gets you. There are guys that get you going. Like, besides football, like, they know how to motivate you just as a man.
Every kid that grows up playing football, Skyy, dreams of scoring a touchdown in the NFL. You get your first touchdown in the NFL in the dang Super Bowl. What's that moment like for you when you're standing around realizing you're about to get a ring and you just contributed to that?
It's special. It's special. It's something that, I'll be able to tell my kids when I get a little older. And that was seeing that picture right there. It was just a special moment, just because I was searching for that touchdown all season, and just for it to come in that moment. Because I really wasn't. I wouldn't say I was expecting it when I walked into the stadium, but it was like, for it to be like, I ran my route, I was wide open, and I'm like, oh, this is the ball's in the air. And then, just how everybody pulled up on me and we started celebrating, and, we got the ring. That was a special moment in my career for sure.
Take me back to that moment, just because looking at the photo and then looking at your face, like, you're just beaming. You have such a big smile on your face, and I'm getting chills for you going back to that moment. So, like, when you're about to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl, what's going through your mind? Like, do you black out? Are you freaking out? You're like, oh my God, I'm about to score a touchdown. Like, what is going through your mind in that moment?
Yeah, honestly, if it wasn't for all of these cameras and pictures, I don't even remember. I just remember just catching the ball, crossing the paint, doing my week celebration, and Pat. Like, I remember, I don't know where the ball went, but Pat always makes sure that you come home with that ball. And I really just remember, after that, I just remember the celebration in the locker room.
Man, so you still have that football? Where's it? Where's the
Oh
football
yeah,
hang
for
out?
sure.
Like, does
It's
it go up
it's
on a
in my
shelf?
man cave in Dallas. Yeah, it's in my man cave in Dallas. I got a whole bunch of stuff on the shelf. So
What's
we saved that one for sure.
But what's that for a kid that played at Western Michigan, right? And then you come into the league and you got to fight every day to get a spot. What was the first moment for you where you turned around and you're like, yeah, I made it. Like, all of this work got me to here, and I have officially made it.
You know what? I'm still looking for that moment, and I feel like that's what makes me the player I am today, is because although I've been to a lot of places that people want to go in this league, like, individually, I still have a lot of stuff to accomplish, and I feel like I'm back to taking steps forward in that regard. So I feel like I can't say that yet. I can't say that yet.
What are those things that you have left to achieve in the NFL?
Just really, we work so hard. We work so hard day in and day out, and I got like a standard for myself, that I want to hit, and I really just want to become the person that I said I was going to be. Coming out of college, and being that second round pick that had high hopes. I feel like at some point in my journey, I veered off, but within the last couple of years, I'm taking strong steps to become that player.
It's always interesting to me, Skyy, because we see this from all the kids that just got drafted. The message is, I'll do whatever it takes to help my team win. But I think about you because,
Yeah.
like, you didn't set out to necessarily be a returner, but that's a huge part of why you have so much value in the league. Like, if you could go back and sort of take who you are now and tell this to you when you were getting drafted, how would you feel about that?
Everybody wants to be. I wanted to be AB. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to be the best receiver there was, and that's still the goal. That is still the goal. But you do have to come and you have to figure out your role, carve out your role, and be just the best at your role. And sometimes that's just enough. Like I'm gonna be the best at what I do. I'm not gonna worry about nothing else. I'm gonna do whatever opportunities that I have, I'm gonna make the most out of them, and I'm gonna be the best at my role. So that's where my mindset is right now, is as a going into my 5th year in the league.
I mean, going into your 5th year in the league, I think that's something that anyone would, would set their sights on. 5 years in the league is absolutely nothing to scoff at, and I'm sure you have a long career ahead of you. But when you look back on your previous 4 years in the league, what do you think has been the most difficult part of the transition into the NFL?
The most difficult part, I would say, just transitioning into being, coming from Western Michigan, where I was the guy, to having everybody on the team being the guy, and you have to still find your way. You still got to find your way, and you can't get frustrated if it's not going your way, knowing that it's a long season. That's one thing I had to learn too. Just if something doesn't go your way in week one, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't hit your goal by week 18. So just staying confident throughout the whole season, and just being disciplined in your work.
It's crazy to me, though. Like, you've had a couple of stops. We talked about the great coaches, but quarterback style couldn't be more different. Like, Mahomes and Brock Purdy are not the same guy in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
We'll start with Mahomes.
Yeah.
What makes Patrick Mahomes special?
First of all, he's a great leader. He's one of the best leaders I've been around. And just as far as, like, preparing and making sure his team is prepared, and you guys see what happens on Sunday. So he's a special player, but I would say that he's a great leader just when you step through the building during the week.
So then what makes Brock special?
I would say a lot of the same things. I feel like in order for you to be a good quarterback in this league, you have to be cut from that cloth. Like, Brock always made sure, if even like going down to me, I came in super late, but he always made sure I was comfortable in the playbook. Like, all right, when we get out there, this is what we might see, or don't be surprised if you do this, and if I see this, this is what's going to happen. So just preparing your playmakers for what could possibly happen out there, and then if it doesn't, if the things we're expecting doesn't happen, I kind of know like what he's thinking, so we're able to improvise, make plays, or he does a great job. He got a lot of playmaking ability too. So I got a lot of praise for Brock for sure.
I think what made the 49ers so special this past season wasn't just Brock, but the fact that when Brock was hurt and Mac Jones came in, the 49ers were
Yeah.
still able to win a bunch of games and still, were able to keep themselves into position to be where they wanted to be. How is that possible that despite so much injury last year in San Francisco, they still found themselves in the postseason?
I think that speaks to the culture that is set over there, like between Kyle, Brock, George, Juice, Christian, like Trent. There's a lot of veteran guys over there that set the culture and allow players that are either new to the system to come in and just fall in line and just see, like, this is how we do things. So it's either you get with us or you get left. So it's not. It's more so. It's like it doesn't matter who's at the position. You know what the expectations are, and you meet them or you don't.
So I know you've
Skyy,
only
we
been
hear
with the Packers.
so
Go ahead, Kelly.
sorry, just quickly, we hear so much in sports and especially in the NFL about culture. And you've had the
hmm
opportunity to be part of two great cultures in the NFL, and you're stepping into another one in Green Bay. What is it? Like, what is it about culture? What makes a good culture? From what we do on the outside looking in, it's like it's palpable. Like, I can see in San Francisco there's a great culture. I can see in Green Bay that there's a great culture. But what is that exactly?
I would say culture to me is what the players allow. Like coaches are supposed to coach. You know what you're going to get from your coach. You know he's going to tell you to do something every day, and you're either going to do it or you're not. But when you're getting like pointers and like people are telling you what to do that are actually out there on the field with you, I feel like that's what builds culture. Like you can't just rely on the coaches to uphold the certain level of culture, I would say. So culture to me is what the players allow. And, the players ultimately set, what goes on in locker rooms or and on the field.
So knowing that you've only been with the Packers for a minute, what have your conversations been like for Jordan Love, who will be a huge part of that culture in Green Bay?
Yeah, Jordan Love is super super talented. And I love how he operates his team too. He's more of a quiet guy, but to me he leads by example. I haven't been there for too long, but I've already seen like just how he does things. Just you just gotta watch him, and he'll make you wanna be better and tighten up. So that's one great thing I see about Jordan is he's a super lead by example guy. He don't have to say too much. You kind of like want to do it because you see him doing it.
Arrowhead is one of the legendary and iconic landmarks in the NFL. You had the opportunity to spend 3 years there playing there. Lambeau absolutely is one of the most iconic venues, not just in the NFL, but in sports, period. What have you heard about playing at Lambeau Field, and what are you most excited for?
Well, first and foremost, I heard that it's really cold. It gets really cold. So I actually played there. I played there 1 year, I think my second year, and it was a super cold game. But like you said, it's an iconic. I played for all like iconic sports franchises, so I'm excited to get out there, get in front of the fans, and make plays on Sundays.
Man, Skyy, we appreciate you hanging out with us. I got to be honest. Ever since you were at Western Michigan, at the time I was hosting college football stuff at ESPN, we were ripping your highlights. Like the day you got drafted, we were like, "This kid's amazing," because you crushed it in
Yes,
college. I
sir.
love the fact that you found your lane in the NFL, man. Thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. Good luck this year. Kick ass. Can't wait for that first Lambeau leap. After you got to come back and tell us all about it.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. I appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you.
Appreciate it. It's great
Thank you,
stuff from
Skyy. Good luck
Skyy,
with
who's just
everything.
out there doing. I can't imagine those three teams. That's a hell of a career. All right, coming up next, we'll figure out who actually deserves to win the NBA lottery this weekend.
Kick is on the way. And Dante Wright will bring it out of the end zone. Right across the 5, the 10, the 15. Right across the 20. Into New Mexico territory. 15, 10, 5. Does he get in?
He did.
Touchdown,
He did.
Pirates.
Dante Wright goes back. He played like a center fielder at Yankee Stadium and then takes it the length of the building. The young man was electric on that kick return.
Do you not enjoy this?
No,
Would you rather not do it?
that's not in the cards.
Why not?
It's not an option. I've worked so hard for so long. I've built myself up to a position and I've dug myself into a hole.
But I feel like you've reached a point in your life where, correct me if I'm wrong, you could do other things.
What am I gonna do? There's nothing like a fight night check. That's the beauty of fighting.
Let's get to your next winner here, Boone. And this time we're not talking about rookie. We're talking about a veteran fallout. Who's a winner to you from the NFL draft?
I think Rashee Rice has to be mentioned, right? Now he doesn't have any additional new competition that we have to worry about, especially a guy like Tate could have shown up there and been that true outside receiver for them. But we're looking at his fantasy outlook right now, and fantasy-wise, this year and beyond, it still looks pretty good. He survived the draft.
Edwards has got it. Throw, tip, intercepted. Destin Mack, the INT. And he makes the biggest play of the game defensively for Orlando.
Great coverage on the back end by the Orlando Pirates. 4th down and 4. Destin Mack in coverage. Big time hit by Kyrie Coleman leads to the interception.
Full circle, John Wall will be the NBA draft lottery rep for the Washington Wizards. The lottery takes place on Sunday. Cue your clown cars. Everybody can drive around. All the conspiracy theorists can try to figure out which envelope was in the freezer before it was selected. All of these things can happen from the chaos.
That's
Look,
never happened.
No, never. And then we'll feed into the I can't believe that Cooper Flag. Like, we're going to have all the conspiracy theories. But the draft lottery begins Sunday at 3 p.m. Teams gather in Chicago. They'll learn their draft pick. The Wizards, Pacers, and Nets own the top odds for the first pick. But Caroline, we're going to figure out the real truth here. We're going to go through some of the biggest stories of the draft lottery with the questions the world needs, which includes which team deserves to win the lottery the most. What say you, my friend?
Oh, looking at all these teams, there's so many that are deserving by my metric of deserving. The metric of these fan bases haven't had diddly squat to look forward to in a long time, and they just deserve something good in their lives. But I'll stick with the team that has one of the highest odds to win it. We're looking at the Wizards, Pacers, and Nets, all three with the highest chance of winning the draft lottery, and I'll go Wizards. I mean, this poor, Wizards franchise, these poor fans, what if they had good in their lives recently, Fitz? Like, their team is so bad that they are totally and completely irrelevant. A lot of teams when teams are bad, it's like, wow, can't believe this team is bad. We're talking about how bad they are. At least you're still relevant. Anybody care about the Washington Wizards? And it's about time that this fan base has, something to look forward to. John Wall will be there representing the team, so it would be a fun little full circle feel good moment. I mean, the Pacers were just in the NBA Finals. They don't deserve it. They'll get Tyrese Halliburton back, and they'll be right back in where they want to be, which is right in NBA Finals contention. They don't deserve it. The Nets, who cares with the Nets? I'll go with the Wizards.
Well, I'm going to put my full troll mask on, and I'm just going to enrage NBA fans everywhere. It is clear that the team that deserves to win the NBA lottery is the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's not even close because, frankly, just because they're doing better than I know, but just because they're better at running their basketball organization than everybody else doesn't mean they should be penalized for it. We live in a society where, we're supposed to reward greatness. You know what greatness is? Outsmarting everybody else to the point that you have the best team in the NBA, to the point that your team can be riddled with injuries and you're still going to win the NBA championship. You're at the front of what could be a dynastic run, and you outsmarted everybody so much that you have a shot at the first overall pick in the NBA draft. If somebody else was stupid enough, Clippers, to give you that opportunity, I'm not going to fault you. The best run organization in all the NBA is the OKC Thunder. And frankly, they should be rewarded for that greatness. I want them to win the lottery.
They will be rewarded,
I want people to lose their minds. No, I want more rewards.
They'll be rewarded with the Larry O'Brien.
Yeah,
just
the
as
Larry
they
O'Brien
were last year.
They earned the Larry O'Brien just like they earned every right to have a shot at the first overall pick. They earned the first overall pick because the Clippers were stupid enough to give it to them. I want OKC to win the Larry O'Brien. And the one thing that will absolutely enrage everybody, the one thing that will make Monday mornings lead the NBA draft lottery, the one thing that will have everybody flocking, like the cat typing on the keyboard for their YouTube comments, is going to be OKC wins a lot. The one thing that will make people finally acknowledge the truth that we all know, which is a lottery system is stupid. The one thing that will do that is OKC winning the lottery. So I'm in. I want to reward greatness. I want OKC to get the first overall pick in the draft. I want OKC to have their pick of whoever they want. I love every ounce of this.
So, Fitz, under that logic, Kansas City Chiefs, your favorite team's division rival, deserves the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft every year, right?
No, because my
they're
favorite
great,
sport...
and they're the modern dynasty. So they deserve to have the number 1 overall pick. So does that mean retroactively the Chiefs get all of the previous number 1 overall picks over the last several years since they've been winning Super Bowls and they've been on their dynastic run? Is Fernando Mendoza a Kansas City Chief?
You know what?
Wow.
You know
Coming up
what?
next
My
on Yahoo
favorite
Sports
sport.
Daily.
My favorite sport is not stupid enough to have a lottery. My favorite sport just has a draft order, 1 through 32. My beloved Raiders earned Fernando.
The way
thank
God
you very much.
intended
All right.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Next up, what team least deserves the number 1 overall pick? What say you?
There's one answer to this question, and it's Dallas. It is 1,000% Dallas does not deserve the number 1 overall pick. I mean, your WNBA team just had back-to-back number 1 overall picks. Now you think your NBA team's going to get back-to-back number 1 overall picks? You don't get rewarded twice for making the stupidest trade in the history of the National Basketball Association. No. You don't get rewarded for trading away Luka Doncic, one of the best players on the planet in his prime, with Cooper Flagg and either Cam Boozer, AJ DeBonza, Darren Peterson. Pick your poison of who you think the best player in the NBA is. Abso-freaking-lutely not. They didn't even deserve it last year. They shouldn't have drafted Cooper Flagg. There was I think a whole lot of funny business going on there, but whatever. That's, now, it's all under the rug now. But at this point, no, they didn't deserve the number 1 overall pick last year. They certainly don't deserve it this year. They do not deserve it back-to-back years. You don't get rewarded for being stupid in the NBA. The Clippers sure as heck haven't.
So when I was a kid, little kid, one time I was in the grocery store, and the grocery stores used to have the bulk candy aisle, right? And I just went in there and I stuck my hand in the bulk candy and I just started to eat that candy. And my mom, Pam, came running through the grocery store, horrified. And she grabbed me by the wrist and where you're like a kid and you're like half hanging, you're like half feet on the ground, half not on the ground. And she just proceeded to pop me on the butt in the middle of the grocery store. And I was so embarrassed. My mom said, no, you did not do that. That's what I want to have happen to anyone that pulls the number 1 overall pick if it says Dallas on it. I just want a full on, no, you do not get that. There is no world where I need Dallas to have the first pick in the NBA draft this year. You made the hell that you live in, and now you just get to live in it. I'm sorry. You don't get rewarded with Cooper Flagg and AJ DeBonza. Not up in here. I'm out on that. So I agree with you. Dallas is the clear choice. All right, what about the most chaotic
100%.
scenario? Give me the scenario that has Kermit the Frog running around going, the whole way.
It's a team that you've already mentioned. It's the Thunder. That's the most chaotic scenario here, because if OKC gets the number 1 overall pick, the NBA world collectively will lose their minds. It'll be like pitchforks and fire in the streets, because what do you mean the best team in the NBA, the likely back-to-back NBA champions, with a player who is likely going to be the back-to-back league MVP, gets the number 1 overall pick in a draft that's stacked and loaded? What? No, there's absolutely no way. So even though I would kind of be here for it, honestly, I would sign up for that. I'm not against OKC getting the number 1 overall pick because I'm here for chaos. It would be the most chaotic situation. Like if the Wizards win it, if the Nets win it, everyone's gonna be like, okay, whatever, who cares? If OKC wins it, pure and utter bedlam in the basketball world. And I like chaos.
Thunder, feel the thunder. So I keep thinking of Imagine Dragons. All right, I'll top you on that just a little bit. I think you're right. That might be, that one, yeah. It might be the most dramatic scenario, but I'll give a chaotic scenario. But how about this one? The Bucks, Milwaukee wins. All right, they win the number 1 overall seed. And then they turn around, whoever wins number 2. I don't know who that is. I really don't care. In this example, whoever wins number 2 trades number 2 for Giannis Antetokounmpo, leaving the Bucks with the first and second picks in the draft and giving them the opportunity to rebuild the entire franchise in one fell swoop. In the greatest draft we've seen in X number of years, give Milwaukee the first 2 picks because they win one of them and they trade Giannis for the other. And all of a sudden, bam, then we have totally complete Milwaukee chaos. Giannis is somewhere else, which gives us something to complain about. But Milwaukee fans still get something to root for as they get 2 beasts out of this draft that totally rebuild their franchise. I like this chaos. Well, let me get you the opposite of chaos. Thank you. We are
that.
agents of chaos on this show. What about the most meh result? Like the result that like you're not watching and you pull up the app and you're like, Yahoo Sports app, who won they won. Who's the meh scenario?
The Nets. Like, who cares? Who cares about the Brooklyn Nets? People who live in Brooklyn don't even care about the Brooklyn Nets. Like, we're watching these Knicks games and looking at Celebrity Row at the Knicks games. Ben Stiller, Timothy Chalamet, Jay-Z. I mean, like a who's who of New Yorkers. I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait, like, isn't Jay-Z from Brooklyn? Like, famously? And he's a Knicks fan. Like, nobody cares about the Nets. I'm sorry. So if they win it, it's like, fine.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I went back and forth between 2 irrelevant franchises. So I've landed on either Sacramento because nothing ever matters in even when Sacramento was good, people still didn't care about Sacramento. It's just sort of like, oh yeah, that's near Golden State, right? Like that's all anybody has to say about Sacramento. Oh yeah, they have what? Like if you run into, I was at a trivia night one night and I was asked, what's the most irrelevant team in all of sports? And trying to figure that answer out, it's Sacramento. Has to be. Sacramento Kings have to be on that answer. But I'll also give honorable mention.
California doesn't even observe Sacramento. Like if you live in LA, San Francisco, San Diego, you're like, no, Sacramento's like not in this state.
The great thing is I can look at this camera and I can say right now, nobody cares about the Sacramento Kings. And if that gets clipped off and aggregated, I'm not worried about it because like 3 people will at me. Be like, how dare you talk about my favorite team? The 3 Sacramento Kings fans on social media will hit me. But Utah is equally irrelevant. I think Utah is equally the place where brands go to die. Like there's just nobody cares about Utah. I love Utah. I love hanging out in Utah. Clarity here. I love it. I've had many a great night hanging out at Sundance. I love St. George. Like there are plenty of places. This is where we qualify what we say so it doesn't sting as much. But the Utah Jazz are just completely
I like
irrelevant.
dirty sodas.
Okay. Yeah. They those are all the rage. I don't know why people don't just make them at home. Like, guys, it's super easy. You buy anyway, I'll give you the recipe online. The draft lottery is Sunday, 3 p.m. We'll see how it plays out. We'll break it down for you, obviously, on Monday. Coming up, ready to break down all the action, I should say, from a Vegas standpoint. Ben Fawkes is going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on the W and the NBA playoffs.
This is rich to me, but again, this is this draft class. Once you get outside the top 10, it's like whatever. But I do think this is a little rich to me. But Les Snead loves his Bama guys. I know he went to Auburn, but he has a thing for anyone that's played in the SEC in the South. He really does. You should have seen his write-up on Julio Jones. It was like fan fiction. This to me is just like, all right, I get your argument. At 13, like that is, you're pushing it. You have one of the best rosters in the NFL right now. Right. This could be a difference maker at some position.
Now, I said to a reporter today, tell me the top 5 stars in the UFC right now. Islam.
Yep, I agree.
Tom Aspinall.
Okay.
Pereira.
Yep. Ilya Taporia.
Yes, he said him.
Khamzat Chimaev.
Yes, and him. I think that was the 5.
Okay.
And I was like, I just feel like right now I look at Tom Aspinall and think you are one of the biggest stars in the sport.
Give us your final loser here, Boone.
Denzel Boston. Among this rookie class, I think we had a lot of hope that he was going to go in round 1. That didn't occur. But they took a first-round receiver in Casey Concepcion, who I think is a better prospect. This team often has to deal with bad weather late in the season, which can also impact pass catchers at the worst possible time in the fantasy calendar. It all boils down to me not being nearly as excited about him as a prospect in Dynasty or redraft.
Edwards on second down, deep shot, end zone, jump ball caught. What a catch for 6. Edwards drops a dime, and Tulsa with Spencer Tears answers right back. 4th down for Orlando. They're taking an end zone shot, and they've got another touchdown. Paxton DeLorette is dealing on a Sunday.
Knicks forward OG Anunoby has been diagnosed with a right hamstring strain as day-to-day, according to Shams, listed as questionable for Game 3 on Friday versus Philly. If there's anything we're used to, it's we all get a little bit nervous with these hamstring injuries in the NBA. But also 76ers star Embiid listed as questionable for Game 3. We bring in Ben Fawkes now to break it all down. All right, so we got no Anunoby likely. We got no Embiid likely. How does that play into the way Vegas sees this one, Ben?
Yeah, so I'm recovering from all the Brooklyn hate, so I'll still do the segment, but under slight
Brooklyn.
protest. Just
It's just
for
the
the
Nets
record.
I don't like.
I hear you.
Barclays
I grew up 2
like
blocks
Barclays.
from Barclays, so I always have to stand up for Barclays.
great venue.
But it is a great venue, understandable. On to the Knicks, who are in the playoffs, unlike the Nets, which has been the case for most of the Nets' experience in Brooklyn. So there are only certain players, right, who have an impact on the spread, and Joel Embiid is one of the biggest. I do a story every year where I kind of ask a bunch of odds makers how much players are worth against the spread. And Embiid, before the season, was actually the 7th most valuable player in the NBA among everyone. He was about 4 points that he was worth to the spread. Now in the playoffs is about 3 points. We just saw this kind of enacted before Game 2, right? We didn't know if Embiid was playing. The Knicks were a 7.5 point favorite. Then Embiid was ruled out. That line moved to 10.5, right? So that gives you a pretty good sense of if Embiid is in or out. Also asked an odds maker about OG Anunoby. He was saying about 1 point to 1.5 points is what he would be worth. Right now, we're seeing the 76ers as a 1.5 point favorite. This did open with the Knicks -2 or -2.5. So potentially leaning that maybe OG is out. We're not sure about Embiid. And obviously in the NBA playoffs, you also have a little bit of that, okay, one team is down 2-0, right? This is really their season. So lines being shifted a little bit in that sense as well. Obviously not too much travel in this series between New York and Philadelphia, but Embiid, a really big player on both ends, especially on offense. And I think for Anunoby, sometimes it seems like, okay, a player like him, how would he impact the spread that much? A point and a half is a decent amount, but you also have to remember he's their best defender. If he can't guard somebody, then the next person has to shift up, and kind of what that does to a ripple effect in the lineup. And then same thing with Embiid. As I'm a Karl Towns supporter, been watching him a long time when he was on the T-Wolves, he just gets in foul trouble. And so with Embiid playing, that's also a bigger impact potentially on Towns, who couldn't stay out of foul trouble when Embiid wasn't on the court too. So be really interesting to see if the spread moves, if one or both those players are ruled in or out for the game tonight.
You bring up the Timberwolves. Let's go to your team, which, might I point out, you said you grew up just down the street from Barclays, yet you're a Timberwolves fan, which only furthers my point that nobody cares about the Nets. But I digress. Your Timberwolves take Game 1, but the Spurs take Game 2 easily. So how are odds makers looking at Game 3, and how are odds makers really looking at the series as a whole?
Yeah, this has been one of the most interesting series, I think, both on the court, more Game 1 than Game 2, but especially from an odds perspective. So when this series opened and we didn't really know if Anthony Edwards, it looked like maybe he was coming back Game 3, Game 4, the Spurs were -2,000. So that's a big favorite. The T-Wolves were 10-1. This is to win the series. Then when Ant was ruled in, it had already been moving a bit before Game 1. The Spurs were down to -550, the Wolves +400. And right now with the series 1-1, so kind of where we started, now the Spurs are -325 and the Wolves are +250. So the Wolves' odds have gotten a little better. We've seen the Spurs right now, they opened about a 3.5 point favorite in Minnesota for Game 3. This is up to 4.5 or 5 at some books. Public all over the Spurs, as you would expect. 80% of the bets, 85% of the action at several sports books. On San Antonio, public likes to bet what they saw last, which was the Spurs blowing out the Timberwolves in Game 2. So the Spurs obviously get a lot of respect from odds makers. Just for comparison, kind of going back to the first round as well, The T-Wolves were about a 1.5 point favorite and then a 1.5 point underdog in those 2 games against the Nuggets. Obviously, Anthony Edwards didn't play for part of game 4, but basically, roughly, that's kind of what it was. So the Spurs getting at least 3 or 4 points more compared to the Nuggets in those series. So Spurs definitely getting respect to the odds makers. Still expected to move on with the series tied 1-1, but obviously those odds significantly shifted because of how Anthony Edwards has looked in the first couple of games.
All right, so let's talk power rankings. OKC still the favorite to win the title. We've talked a lot about their dominance today. When the books power rank them, how big is the gap between OKC and everybody else?
Yeah, and OKC now 6 games against the Lakers, 6 wins and 6 covers. So, and I think they've won by 25.5 points on average. So that's a tough series for the Lakers. Overall, though, the Thunder still the favorites in the West. They are minus 250. The Spurs are next closest at plus 250. So minus 250 is about a 71% chance. The Spurs, they're about a 28% implied probability to win. The Thunder are going to be favored over everyone. Especially coming out of the East. They're basically number 1. Talking to one odds maker, he had the Spurs 2 points below them on a neutral court, and then he had the Knicks 2.5 points below them. So that would be the Knicks 4.5 points below the Thunder. And then there was kind of a gap. He had the Pistons 3.5 points below the Knicks, and then the Cavs 2.5 below them. The Lakers and the T-Wolves following that. And obviously the T-Wolves would be a little different if they were whole, and the Lakers would be a little different if they had Luka as well. But the Thunder is still a clear number 1. I think even though the Spurs obviously had success in the regular season, the Thunder would still be kind of pretty big favorites if those two met in the next round. And obviously the Thunder would also be even bigger favorites over anyone coming out of the East, just because of the power ratings and kind of what we've seen. And the Thunder, if anything, they're a little boring, but very dominant, right? And I think sometimes that narrative gets the Spurs are the new team on the block, and they have Wemby, and they're a lot more exciting to watch. But that being said, the Thunder have been a dominant team. They've been the favorite all season, and now the odds-on favorite to win the title. And it would really be shocking if they weren't at least in the Western Conference Finals, and obviously with a really good chance to win. So they are by far the number 1 power-rated team. The Spurs a little bit behind them.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder are just an absolute wagon. I want to stick on the hardwood, but flip over to the W. The 30th season of the WNBA gets underway today. So what are some of the popular championship picks that bettors are wagering on?
Yeah, it's if Caitlin Clark is in it, bettors want to wager on it. Is pretty much where we are in the W, and they've become certainly the Indiana Fever, kind of that public team, right? We always talked about the Dallas Cowboys, and for some time it was the Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the LA Dodgers, right? There's certain teams that you kind of have to pay a little bit of a tax on, and that's certainly something with the Fever and obviously Caitlin Clark as well. But we've seen the Fever, they are right there. The Liberty as the favorite at, I believe, what are they, plus 210? Yep. The Las Vegas Aces, winners last year, plus 375, and the Fever there at plus 425. Fever are the most bet at several sports books, have the most wagers on them, the most handle. I think one team that stood out a little bit as well is the Dallas Wings. Some trying to discern and ask around about exactly the big bets and how much they were, but some bets on the Wings. They had at BetMGM the second highest handle or dollars wagered of any team in the W as well. So that's the one. Indiana Fever, though, still the biggest liability. Even at that number, only about 4-1, that still does add up when there's just so many tickets on them. And I think they're a little bit not to the level of, right, the Cubs, where they hadn't won in so long. People wanted kind of those memorialized tickets. But I think people just are so interested in Caitlin Clark and obviously see her and know her and kind of want that, even if it's a $5 bet, a $10 bet, that, hey, this is the one we want to have, so that at the end of the season we can say, hey, when she won her first title, we had a piece of that action.
Educate me then for a second, because obviously when you're as popular as Caitlin in Indiana is, but we all know that sharp betting comes in large bets, right? Placed late. So how much does just popularity impact the line and some of the ways that we view the Fever? Because I feel like the odds are how we cover the sport, right? So we sit there and say, wow, the Fever have really good odds. Do they have good odds to be a title team, or is that just inflated because people that don't watch the W but love Caitlin Clark are putting a bunch of money on the Fever?
Yeah, so it's a combination. It's why it's always a little difficult to give an exact right answer, right? So the odds that we see on a screen there, right? The Fever, that plus 425 isn't their true implied probability to win the title, right? So there's a couple things going into that. One, there's a lot of money wagered on the Fever, so they're going to push those odds up, right? So even if they were supposed to be, let's say their true probability was 8-1, they're going to push that up because books don't want the liability with all those bets increasing. And the second is that bookmakers know that the public is going to bet the Fever at just about any number, right? Maybe not if they're the favorite, but you essentially are paying a Caitlin Clark tax, right? So if the Fever really should be plus 600, the books know they can offer that at plus 425, and most people aren't going to care between plus 425 and plus 600, so they can have less liability. They push those odds up, and so they don't have to deal with as much, where people are still going to bet the same amount. So you're kind of paying that tax in the same way with like the Dodgers or another public team, the Cowboys. Sometimes books know, okay, we can offer odds that are a little worse because the public is still going to bet on that team or that player no matter what. And that way we don't have as high liability for the same volume of bets. It would be good if bettors were a little more what we call price sensitive. But ultimately, if you're only betting casually and you want to have a bet on Caitlin Clark to win MVP or the Fever to win, you may open up 1 or 2 sports books. You're probably not opening up 5 or looking at an odd screen. You're just going to say, hey, I have an account at this sports book. I'm going to put money on the Fever to win, and I'm good if the price is plus 425, plus 500, or plus 600.
Ben, let me go ahead and apologize in advance if you just simply do not have the information or numbers on this. But I'm curious because we know that the WNBA has grown in popularity. We're seeing it in viewership numbers. We're seeing it with the new CBA. We're seeing it with the amount of money that's invested into this league. We know that some of the most bet sporting events across the sports landscape are also the most popular ones. The Super Bowl, March Madness. How have you seen the amount of bets placed and the amount of just like sheer money that's been bet on the WNBA increase over time?
So, yeah, I wouldn't say I have exact numbers at the ready, but certainly the W has increased over the past few years. Some of that was pre-Caitlin Clark, obviously a lot of that with Caitlin Clark. And I think also just kind of where it falls right in the sports calendar. And that's something that, post-COVID as well, when all those kind of sports were figuring out and kind of making up seasons and starting at weird times, there is a nice kind of defined gap in the calendar. A big one being there isn't football, right? There's no college football. There's no NFL. Now it'll be interesting this summer, right? Because you also have the World Cup, which is a massive betting event worldwide. We'll see how it is in the U.S., especially with the World Cup being held in the U.S. But yeah, the W has continued, obviously having those kind of different nights that you have standalone games as well to mix in with the NBA playoffs too and the NHL playoffs. So it's a nice another thing to bet. And I think as people have watched more and kind of seen and become more familiar with the product as well and seen kind of the skill and the ability, there's been more and more interest as well from a betting perspective. And I think Caitlin Clark has also helped that and elevated, obviously now a new CBA as well, much deserved for the league. So it's only going to continue to increase. And that also has led, it's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle. The more interest there is, odds makers see there's more bets, then they offer more markets, more potential player props, and then there's more bets on those as well. So it's kind of that flywheel effect of the more interest will lead to more markets because it's worth the time for odds makers to put in to have more markets because they know people will bet on them. And then that kind of continues to grow and grow.
It's not that long ago that the buddies that we all had that were betting on the WNBA got a side eye from people like, you're betting on the WNBA? And now it's common. And it's just a reminder that for all the negatives we talk about for gambling, which are very real, some of the positivity is that, hey, when people start betting on things, they get more engaged in it. So it does help the product consistently. Betting helps the W and the W helps betting all at once. Ben, we appreciate you. At BFawkes22 is how you follow him. Read him, yahoosports.com/betting. Ben, have a great weekend. Enjoy the beginning of the W season. and the lottery, Barclays is wonderful. Now, we appreciate your time.
We love Barclays.
All good. You too, guys.
We love Brooklyn. Thanks, Ben.
We do love Barclays. We love Ben mostly. That's what that's all about. Coming up, can't wait. We're going to figure out the best action of the weekend.
Broader question, I think, from the Phoenix side. How do you feel about their direction moving forward? How do you feel about their ability to build off of what this season was?
How could you feel bad about the direction? They weren't supposed to be here. You have a coach that understands exactly what he wants to do on both ends of the floor. So just getting the right pieces around it, having a level of versatility, that's all you got to do. So I think it's a salute to Phoenix. It's unfortunate it went this way in the playoffs, but the Thunder are a machine, and it was a bad matchup.
There were rumors that this was going to happen before the draft, that Jadarian Price was going to end up going to the Seahawks at 32. I think you can make a very strong argument that you could take Price as early as the 106. That might end up getting you in trouble, but I don't know if I feel that strongly about some of the other players in that range.
There was not many other depth charts like across the league where there's just a smooth sailing spot to that running back one position.
Also got a rushing touchdown. Gonna run it to Brown. Flea flicker. Back to Myler. Under pressure. Myler throws it late. Brown. And Brown, the stiff arm, crosses the midfield. Down the far boards. Brown for the end zone. Waltzes in for the Rattlers touchdown.
That's the MVP throwing to the offensive rookie of the year right there.
So Brown took the handoff, flipped it back, and then he found space.
The truth here is this is a very far delineation from where the top of the quarterback game is right now, physically. Correct. You know, when you look at, like, you call the top 12 quarterbacks, everyone's got some sort of extreme physical trump card.
This ain't Taylor Green.
Part of the problem to me with this pick is you saw exactly where the physical limitations hurt Ty Simpson last year at Alabama.
Simpson is a pretty good athlete, but I'm not going to run design runs with him because he'll get crushed.
Former 49ers wide receiver Juwan Jennings and the Vikings have reached an agreement on a one-year deal worth up to $13 million. Another weapon for the Vikings. Not sure how well poised their quarterbacks will be to take advantage of those weapons, but more weapons can't hurt. Caroline, how do we feel about this addition to the Minnesota Vikings?
I love Juwan Jennings. I think he is such a unique receiver and that you will never find a more willing blocking receiver in the National Football League. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He plays tough. He plays physical. He can do so many different things. So I think in that right, he's an asset, right? You pair Juwan Jennings and obviously with Justin Jefferson, one of the, if not the best wide receivers in the National Football League, you're starting to see an incredibly diverse wide receiver room. But that's not where my question is with the Minnesota Vikings. My question with this team has never been, you know what, they could really use some better receivers in this room. No, of course not. My question has always been with quarterback. That has been the thing that's been plaguing this Vikings organization this past year. That's what is plaguing them moving forward. I don't think J.J. McCarthy is the future. I surely don't think Kyler Murray is going to be their future in Minnesota. So at least I'll give Minnesota the credit for giving the quarterback room that is a massive question mark, plenty of weapons and plenty of options to throw to. But the question remains, and who is the quarterback moving forward in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, that's where, look, I'm not great with math, but I always say this, like, not sure where the parentheses go, but if we put all the weapons of the Vikings in the parentheses, plus JJ or Kyler equals 0. I have 0 hope for the Vikings this year because I don't like either of their quarterbacks. Squarely on record with that. But this is still a good signing for them. You might as well do everything you can to help what is, I think, a pathetic quarterback room, to say it bluntly. All right, so we'll keep you updated on any new transactions there. But it is time to bring Bart Scott into the show without actually bringing Bart Scott into the show because it's time for a little can't wait. This is where we invoke the spirit of Bart and we take a look at some of the action of the weekend and we decide if it's something we can't wait for. If it's a Bart, you will hear this sound effect. Can't wait. But what's the opposite of a Bart, you may ask? Well, of course, because we are grown-ups on this show, the opposite of a Bart is a ... fart, in which case you'll hear this sound effect. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Bad. So let's take a look at some of the action. We'll start with tonight's NBA action. Knicks headed to Philly, looking to take a commanding 3-0 lead. Is this a Bart or a fart?
This is such a Bart. This series is so fun. Yes, that's correct, Bart Scott. I can't wait for this. This series is fun because of the brands. The series is fun because of the rivalry between these two teams. The series is fun because, game one, the Knicks were rolling, and it is so fun to watch this team when they're firing on all cylinders. And then this game was close. It was back and forth. There's injury questions. Will Joel Embiid? Won't Joel Embiid? OG Anunoby's availability. How do the Knicks overcome him not being available and dealing with that hamstring? So I am so in on this series. I've been loving this one. Total Bart.
Okay, so the brands and the series and the action and the rivalry, that's all Bart. But the basketball for this, it's going to be a fart, right? Like, we're missing guys on both sides. I mean, no OG Anunoby is going to be substantial.
We didn't have
no
Joel
Embiid,
Embiid in game 2, and that was the best game of the series so far. I mean, of 2 games.
Well, I don't doubt that. I honestly think if there's no OG Anunoby, I think the 76ers are going to roll at home. I think this is going to be an out-of-control game. Let's say that. I'm going to go, yeah, I think the 76ers roll the Knicks at home with no OG Anunoby. How about that? Just coming out with the hot takes there. I think this game by halftime, I think you're watching Family Guy on one screen, and you've relegated this one to second screen. How about that? Yeah, I'm just throwing.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the Sixers win, but to see the Sixers roll.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching Stewie by halftime. I'm telling you. All right, how about this one? We'll get to the next game. Series heads back to Minnesota. We have Wemby and the Spurs looking to take a lead in Minnesota. This one 1-1. Is a Bart or a fart game 3 between San Antonio and Minnesota?
Ooh, it's a Bart. It is such a Bart.
Wait.
I mean, this series, yep, absolutely. This series tied 1-1. 2 of the most exciting young stars in the NBA, and Wemby. You could tell Wemby and the Spurs were pissed off in game 2. I think the T-Wolves are probably feeling a little bit of that, and they're like, hey, the series is tied. We're going back home. Like, why not us? So I've been loving this series as well. 100% Bart.
See, here's the thing.
Fitz, what do you want? What more do you need?
Look, I think game 1 in this series was an absolute aberration, and they caught the Spurs sleeping. And I think game 2 is exactly what we're going to see for the rest of this series. This is going to be a blowout. Again, at halftime, I'm going to be watching Bob's Burgers. I'm going to have a good animated series going on one TV. This one will be going to the secondary TV. This game's going to be a fart. Now, the brands are a part. I love every ounce of it. Can I get the fart sound effect? Conscientious. Thank you so much. I just wanted to get that in for you. Look, yes, I know. The Spurs are going to just absolutely manhandle the Timberwolves. This thing will be done early. Minnesota goes down. I'm on with my hot takes. How about this one? Cleveland hosting game 3 against Detroit. Obviously, we have seen the meltdown of Harden. It has been covered on this show. Is this the Bart or the fart that we need?
No, this is a fart. Like during college football season, when it's like a noon kickoff and it's like 40 degrees and overcast and raining, and you've got a riveting 10-7 game between Iowa and Wisconsin, and you're like, who the hell is actually subjecting themselves to this? This is sometimes how I feel about, or this really is how I feel about watching these two teams play. It's boring, it's slow, it's defensive, and if I see James Harden turn the ball over one more time, I am going to poke my eyeballs out with a fork. So, fart for me.
Yeah, no, you're 1,000% right. This is a fart. The whole series has been a fart so far. It's going to continue to be a fart. Notice the theme here. LeBron and the Lakers, OKC, Caroline, I'll say it. I'll wrap up my whole NBA take. This is a fart. Oh, OKC's going to hammer him. It's going to be ugly.
This is a fart. It's going to be ugly. OKC is going to roll. I am with you 100%. This is a fart. I think going into it, I thought maybe it could be a Bart. Maybe the Lakers could make it a series. But as we have seen in their 4 meetings in the regular season, and then now their 2 meetings in the series, OKC is just better than the Lakers and everyone else in the NBA. So I don't need to watch that.
Real quick, before we get to one other thing we know, can we agree that the biggest Bart of the weekend might be Caitlin taking on Paige? Like, just getting the fever, taking on the wings. Like, that's a big old Bart. I want to give a Bart out here somewhere. That's a Bart. Come on, the WNBA tipping off this weekend. That's huge Bart, right?
Total Bart. And it's not just Caitlin taking on Paige. It's the two most recent number one overall picks taking on the two previous number one overall picks. So the last 4 number one overall picks in the WNBA draft going head to head. Leah Boston,
Wow.
Caitlin Clark taking on Paige Beckers and AZ5. I thank you to the WNBA scheduling gods for putting this on the schedule for the first weekend because it's going to be an absolute blast. Also looking at Aces Sparks, that's on Sunday. I think that's going to be a great matchup. Kelsey Plum and the Sparks taking on her former team in the Aces, 2 teams that I think are going to be great on the West Coast this year in the W. So that's another one I'm keeping an eye out for as well.
I'm often tough on Kathy Engelbert. I think you're right. They did a great job on scheduling for the opening weekend. You know what's always a Bart? IFL action on the Yahoo Sports Network. In case you haven't checked it out, wherever you're watching us right now, you can watch the IFL every single weekend happening. And there are some games this weekend. Fisher's Freight, absolute juggernaut that runs the ball incredibly well, taking on an Orlando Pirates team that's tried to get exactly to their peak coming up in San Antonio, taking on Northern Arizona. You've got double action on Saturday for you, not to mention there's Sunday action as well with the IFL that we can't wait for. If you've never watched it, think of it this way. It's football on an ice rink at the pace of the NBA. Like they are running into the boards. They're flying over the boards. Caroline and I honored to be a constant part of IFL broadcast. Caroline, do you have a game this weekend? Do you have a game this weekend?
I do not have a game this weekend. I have a wedding this weekend, but I will be watching on the Yahoo Sports Network all weekend long.
Yeah, we always are. The IFL kicks ass. Keep watching it. Hang out with us Monday morning. We'll be back right here. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching.